We've reached the top of the hour. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar, which is New Thinking on Improving Quality. And I'd like to introduce to you our two speakers who are going to be both talking about quality. First of all, welcome to Thomas Laird from Expedia Interaction Marketing. Thomas, you run a 500-seat outsourced contact center, and you're also responsible for the Call Center Geek podcast, which I know is a very popular podcast.
Yeah, so I appreciate it, Johnny. Thank you. It's awesome to be here. I think, you know, as an outsourcer, there's a lot of people that are here that are in different channels, right? So there's people that are running insurance call centers and retail call centers, and you know, all different types of contact centers. And I think, you know, with being an outsourcer, I can relate to a lot of the pain points of a lot of different people here on how we're doing QA and how we can kind of relate it to the group as a whole.
Excellent. So, and also delighted to welcome Lauren Maschio from Nice Systems. Lauren is with product marketing for the analytics and quality product lines. Welcome to today's webinar, Lauren.
Thanks, Jonty. Great to be here today.
It's great to have you back. And you're going to be looking at some of the way that some software tools can help automate the process.
Yes, we'll be talking a lot about some of those topics that you just read out that are the greatest challenges. So I'm excited to get going.
Excellent. So just a little bit of housekeeping. If you want to watch a replay of today's webinar, you can do that. That's at callcenterhelper.com/recorded webinars. It's a good time now to join the chat room. The link to the chat room is callcenterhelper.com/chat. We're not doing it in the box on the Zoom. It is going to be in the Call Center Helper chat room. So so you can either use the long callcenterhelper.com/chat, or just nice and easy, just pop this address here, cch.chat, into your browser. You'll go straight in, put in your first name, email address, and you'll be straight into the chat room. We've got about 54 people logged in already, so it's a good one to do that. If you want to get hold of copies of the slides, the chat room is by far the easiest way to do that. And you can just download the slides by following this link. You can also get a link on that same page. Will point you to Thomas's Call Center Geek blog as well. So a great way in there. There's also details for both Thomas and Lauren of their contact details if you want to connect with them on LinkedIn. I'm sure they'd be happy to receive your requests for that. The chat room is in a separate window, so it does help if you can either perhaps put the chat room on your mobile phone, or you could put your chat room up on the screen and then have the two screens side by side. They are not integrated, but on most PCs nowadays, there's enough space to get the two together. And when you're logged into the chat room, you'll notice these little buttons, A, B, C, D. When we go to the quiz, those are the buttons that you need to press to take part in the quiz. So we're going to be giving, so you can ask tips or questions or answer other people's questions in the chat room. Use hashtag question for question or hashtag tip for a tip. And there is a either a bottle of champagne or box of chocolates or an Amazon gift voucher for the best tip, which I will pick, and we'll draw out live at the end of today's webinar. So those are always very popular. So if you've got any tips on how to improve quality, that's the place to do it. So I think probably now is a great time to jump across to Thomas. And Thomas, if you'd like to share with us your thoughts about how to improve quality.
Sure.
Just let's share your presentation.
So thank you and welcome everybody. And I think too, thank you for the people in the States here that kind of woke up early with us. I appreciate that, and those in the UK. So a lot of really good points that kind of came across, Jonty, from you on you know, the problem and pain points that people have with QA now. You know, one of them that kind of really resonates with me is how do we measure soft skills, right? How do we measure tone? How do we measure word usage? You know, we're not really doing that as a legacy industry. So how can we kind of evolve what we're doing? And so what I want to give is some firsthand knowledge of how we're doing it and some of the tools that we're using that kind of, I think will ham and egg, I guess, really well with Lauren and with her presentation on some of the, getting deeper into the software pieces of it. But this is kind of what the end results of what you can do with rethinking the quality. So we all talk about when I consult, and that's kind of another business that we have is I go to a lot of centers that I talk to the on-floor managers and they say, hey, we're doing everything right? Our service levels look really good. We have an 80-20 SLA. We're hitting it every day. After call work, our talk time's really good. We just did our first rollout of self-service. So we've knocked down about 10% of our calls and it's looking really good there. But they'll also say, yeah, and our quality is pretty good too. Most of the time we're like an 80 out of 100. Or I'll have the executives say, hey, our CSAT and our NPS just aren't where they need to be. And there's this disconnect, right, of these legacy metrics that we've been using compared to what we need to be looking at today, which is the entire customer journey. And with that to focus on today is the rep piece of that journey. And talking about their soft skills, talking about their tone, talking about their word usage, which then correlates to that customer experience. It's great that we can hit metrics, but even when we hit metrics, that experience might not be there for the customer, depending on what the rep does or what that other experience is. So, we see this still today, right? And this is kind of the evolution now of our industry, but most managers and most of you guys that are out there, you're benchmarking your centers on efficiency first methodologies, right? You're looking at SLAs, you're looking at handle time, you're looking at ASAs. Every RFP that we get into my BPO, just talks about this stuff, very little on sentiment, which we're going to get into. But it talks about these hardcore metrics that everyone's been very comfortable with for for many, many years. So having said that, let's ask you a quick question. And John, I know we have a poll here that kind of asks, what are some of the metrics that people are used to, and what are the things that you're kind of benchmarking as the most important metrics in your contact center? I think this will be really interesting, and then we can kind of continue this discussion with how we can evolve that.
So we'd like you to pick two metrics that you think are the most important in your organization. Just pick two. So you can pick two from service level, average handling time, adherence, customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, or quality score. So just if you could pick two of those. If there are any other answers you've got, if you'd just like to put that into the chat room, which you can get to from callcenterhelper.com/chat, or just type cch.chat into your browser. I think we've got most people have voted here. I'm just going to share the results. We've got a sample size of 115 on the voting. So I'm just going to share the results. Well, quite interestingly, quality scores didn't make it as one of the top one, since we're doing a webinar on quality. I think I would have expected that to be a little higher. So the top result, customer satisfaction, most important metric, followed by service level, then quality scores. Average handling time is good to see right down the bottom. Surprisingly low employee satisfaction, only 23%, and adherence 14%. So some of those are probably a bit lower, Thomas, than I would have expected.
Yeah, and I think, some of this is, there's always a disconnect, right? There's quality scores, CSAT, employee satisfaction, people trying to kind of almost figure out what that is and how that can plays into it. Service level is always kind of the number one, because if you don't answer the calls on time, almost everything else kind of, doesn't fall into play. But there is some customer satisfaction and employee satisfaction and quality. I think what we're going to talk about is kind of melding those together to really get a number that kind of tells really what's going on in your contact center. So to kind of continue that, and that poll is great. That kind of frames a lot of kind of, I think, what we want to talk about here. As I kind of said, and this is probably a little bit of a redundant slide, but those telephony metrics, really, they're just telling us, not so much of the customer experience or the quality that associate gave, right? They're just telling really if we answered the calls at an appropriate time, And if our ROI is good because our agents are efficient as well, right? Which is important, but we want to really look today at how quality is done and how we can rethink the quality piece of this. So right now, and I know it's most of you out there because it definitely was us until we kind of took on this, I guess, new methodology is you have an algorithm. I call it an algorithm, or you have a quota, right? It's the certain number of calls that you're scoring in your call center per week or per month. So, hey, on our program, we score 3 calls per rep per week. And, you know, they have to be at an 80% or higher, or then there's an action plan or something happens with that, right? So everybody kind of does that. And that might not go away, but that we're going to talk about how we can evolve that. And the second piece is you guys, because that survey talked about customer satisfaction, I am assuming so many of you are doing after call CSAT surveys or NPS surveys, or you're sending emails out afterwards, right? So today, this is kind of the core process of how we judge our agents, and then how we judge the customer kind of sentiment or the customer experience. And while those are important, I think we can evolve that. So the problems with this, right, is this old school algorithm or quota system is you're listening to less than 1% of your customer interactions. And I'm going to say interactions, right? So it's not just your calls, right? Because the tools that we have today can do quality and can check email, can check chat, can check your voice calls, right? So a lot of you are doing a very poor job on email because it's a pain, because I know it, right? I've been in that world. A lot of you are also struggling with really reconciling chat and what is being said on chat. So that's a big problem. The other problem is when you listen to calls and you have that quota system, there's a lot of calls that you can't even score, right? So a customer that's calling on a non-qualified, some type of non-qualified caller, or a call that really, they just had a quick question, so you really can't even get a full score on. So you're losing some of those. And then the third part with your QA departments, because we all do this, is right, you're kind of finding that needle in a haystack. You're trying to find a teachable moment, or you're trying to find something that's going on with the customer that you can kind of report back on, right? So a ton of things can be going on over here on the right, but you maybe just be listening to a couple things here on the left and have no idea what's going on. So it's a very inefficient method, right? It's a step that we all need to take because we all need to start to listen, but there's a better way to do things now. And I want to kind of get into some of this because it kind of gets me pretty fired up with it. But the last piece of this, of how we're doing things now too, is your CSAT and your NPS. I'm one of the, probably a call center outsider that is actually anti CSAT scores and NPS. And I've become more and more as we've gone on with this. And the only reason is that I'm seeing that only the really happy people, right? The people that had a really good experience, and that experience might just be that they got a refund, right? They might have had a difficult experience with the rep, but they got their end result. So they're really either really happy or they're really irritated with what happened. And again, the rep could have gave a great experience, but the end result that the customer had wasn't happy. So they go on and they hammer you for your CSAT or your NPS, or they say, hey, that rep did a poor job. The other thing that I find very frustrating with CSAT and NPS as a kind of a core platform is that there's very little feedback to actually fix the issues, right? So we might give negative scores, but we don't really know the whole journey or what can we actually fix. So today's quality programs fix all this. So there's my John C. Riley guy, right? That when I was doing our pre-call, John T. wasn't sure if we should have this in here or not, but now I think it's good, right? About halfway through the slide. So what should we do, right? How should we monitor? How should we do QA? And what we need to do, and what we have done here, is we've evolved our QA with the technology of today, right? We're rethinking the metrics that are actually mattering, right? And we're actually bringing in new metrics and new kind of, I say theories, but new ways to look at things. And one of them is to focus less on a rep QA score, right? That is a subjective score that someone in a back office scored, and maybe there's an argument over. And we want to focus more on agent sentiment scoring. I'm going to talk about sentiment here. So what is agent sentiment? What is customer sentiment? Why is it important? So when Jonty was going through what the biggest issues were here, the one that kind of stood out to me was, how do we measure soft skills, right? How do we measure tone? How do we measure word usage? How do we measure if a rep is being short on a call, if they're engaging, right? All those things, again, were very subjective, and a lot of times we weren't. But now with sentiment scoring through speech analytics, we can look at 100% of all of the interactions that come in, have AI and have a platform that's actually listening to every single call, right? It's scoring an agent now on sentiment. So I'm probably getting ahead of a couple of my slides, but I'm getting excited about this now. In our call center, right, our dashboards that we have on our TVs, I guess at least when everybody was here, in-house, we showed our leaderboard of sentiment, right? That was just as important as our leaderboard of handle time, or our tickers of service level, right? So sentiment is a way that we can take all of the issues that come in, and all of the questions, and how a rep is interacting with the customer, and we can score it, which is a really an amazing piece of technology, an amazing turn for the industry. So this is what gets me fired up about analytics and about the new way of doing things. Is one, instead of listening to less than 1% of all interactions, we're listening to 100% of every single call that comes in, every single chat session that comes in, every single email that comes in. And we can flag, and we can look at specific things in the data. So we're not just kind of trying to figure out if we can listen and find that one rep who's maybe doing something wrong, or I like to say a teachable moment, right? But we're having the system look at everything and flag calls. So our QA people aren't trying to find things. They're more focused now on fixing things, which is a huge kind of change and evolution of the thought process. So we can score and rank agent sentiment, which is really cool, because we can actually pay, which is my fifth bubble on the right. We're actually paying and incenting our reps off of sentiment. So, because I know there'll probably be some questions on this, we have a base rate that all of our agents get. If we have a sales program, it's very easy to give, some type of, commission or some type of quota that they need to hit. But it was very difficult to say, it's unfair for the customer service guys that have no cross-sell, have no upsell. How do we incent them more? And analytics has given us a tool now so that we can incent our top reps, because we can actually judge who's being nice on the phone, who's using proper words, who's using the proper tone, who's making sure that every single disclosure, every single word is being read perfectly. And those reps deserve to be paid more. So there's an actual way to kind of incent attitude, right? Which is an amazing kind of thing to look at. We can tag fraudulent or suspicious calls, right? We're not just trying to hope that we find them. The other really cool thing that we didn't focus on today because we're focused on QA, but the other really cool ancillary piece of this is that all this big data is coming in, so we can get customer trending keywords. So we can get actionable marketing data in the contact center. So a cool example that I give from this is, we have a retail client who launches a new product, or they have a special that goes out. I can tell them in a week's time, hey, 38% of the customers that called in use the phrase too expensive. So maybe we need to pivot on, the price point, or we need to pivot on some of the marketing that you're doing with that, or maybe we need to give more incentive on it. So that's a really cool piece of this. And it also kind of shows, when we talked about CSAT and NPS, that we don't know why, right? They have a lower CSAT or NPS, or why that customer is irritated. Well, now these trending keywords are going to tell us if we have a problem with our self-service, if we're going to have a problem with our IVR, if we have a problem with our website or our app, right? So it might not be the actual rep's problem, but it actually gives us things to fix. So again, we understand kind of the why. So I think that you kind of see the full arcing different way that we can now look at data. We can look at quality, and it doesn't become just a rep in a QA area trying to find something wrong, but it becomes this kind of employee or customer-centric model that we're taking all the interactions, kind of funneling out what needs to be handled and what needs to be fixed, and being able to focus more on that than the actual finding of the problem, because the AI and all the technology is actually doing that work for us. So I think I kind of summarized this of how it's evolved our center as a whole. This is kind of my last slide is, You know, we're not just agents listening for specific things. We become more of our QA is more of an analyst type position, and not an analyst like a programmer, but an analyst like they're analyzing all of the metrics that are coming in from our analytics. And we can now do pinpointed listening, right? So looking at specific reps who maybe have lower sentiment because obviously their tone's not right. Their soft skills aren't where they need to be. They're not saying things in a disclosure. And we can watch for flagged calls. So if we have we want to flag every time that somebody says the word lawyer or legal, right? We couldn't do that before. You would just hope that you would find that. Now we can do that. We can flag all those calls and we can listen and take a deeper dive into what actually happened on those calls, or we can alert people that say, hey, maybe we have a problem. You can spot agent training needs much easier. And then, you know, as a kind of an ancillary, which is a whole nother webinar, right? Spot trends, not only from a QA standpoint, but on the customer journey standpoint. And where did they have pain points, right? It might not be the call center's fault that your CSAT or NPS is low. It might be your self-service model. And the other thing from an associate level change, you know, you have to get a culture buy-in on this. They have to understand what sentiment means. You have to dig deep into what changes sentiment, which is basically their tone, their word usage, all the things that I'm sure you're trying to train and get out of your agents in your call center. You know, our culture here at Expedia is attitude and effort. And effort was pretty easy, right? You know, you show up and we would incent off that, but attitude was always very difficult. How do we incent on somebody's attitude? And analytics and then kind of the new way of QA has kind of given us, you know, a tool to be able to pay our agents more for actually being nice, which is a pretty cool thing. So again, that's the evolution that we've seen from our center is the trying to find an issue to issues are now here. How do we go fix them? And I think it's really evolved kind of what we've done and how important these new tools are. So just again, here's my cheap plugs. So I do have a podcast. It's called Advice from a Call Center Geek. You can find it anywhere that, you know, you listen to your podcast. You can join our SMS texting community. And then I know that there's some links on, in the chat room as well to get us on LinkedIn as well. So thank you very much. And I'll hand this back over to you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for that. Indeed, Thomas, some great points there. We're going to be jumping into a quiz in a minute, so just give you a chance to log into the chat room to take part in that. The link here is www.callcenterhelper.com/chat. And once you're logged in there, you'll see these buttons there. But before we do that, while you're logging in, I'd just like to say, what did you like best about Thomas's presentation? Certainly there are some good points in there, Thomas. We need to move feedback away from just the really happy or the really angry customers. I think it's a very good one. Rethink the metrics to think about, not about a QA score, but more about a sentiment score. And certainly I did like the bit about paying staff to be nice. I think there's not enough niceness in the world. So I think that's a great thing to do. So if you'd like to log into the chat room, if you're not there already, either type in callcenterhelper.com/chat or just type cch.chat into your thing, and you'll see these little buttons here when you're logged in. So let's go and see how many we've got logged into the chat room. So let's just jump across here, and so we've got 104 people logged into the chat room. So just give you a minute to go in. The link here, callcenterhelper.com/chat. And you'll see these buttons here. So if you want to get ready to vote, and I'm going to start the first question now. True or false? Over half of contact centers are still using spreadsheets for QA. So press either the A button or the B button, which is the red button, or the blue button there. So just like to, true or false, over half of contact centers are still using spreadsheets for QA. I think most of you have voted there. Just wait for the last couple to come in. Hopefully get this one right. Yes, most of you got that right. 91 of you did. The actual answer is it's only just over 50%. 51% of contact centers are still using spreadsheets. But on a positive note, something just under 50% are using specialized QA or quality management systems. So a bit of a change that's happened. This comes from the call center helper report, what our contact center is doing right now. So next question, which of the following is not a QA best practice? Is it A, aligning quality scores with CSAT scores? Is it B, encouraging self-assessment? Is it C, holding quality calibration sessions? Or is it D, using the same scorecard across all channels? So just like to vote on that. A, B, C, or D. So this is the one, which of the following is not a QA best practice? Aligning quality scores with CSAT scores, A. B, encouraging self-assessment. C, holding quality calibration sessions, or using the same scorecard across all channels. Well, I think most of you got that right as well. Using the same scorecard across all channels. Article in Call Center Helper, Martin Duke says, no, please do not do this. There are different rules of engagement across different channels, as the conversation from one channel to the next is completely different. So it's important to have differentiation there. Okay, what percentage of contact centers evaluate more than 10% of their contacts for quality purposes? Is it A, 4%, B, 14%, C, 24%, or D, 34%? So which percentage evaluate for more than 10% of their contacts for quality purposes? And then I think in a lot of cases that there's only about 1% get done. So what would you say is the percentage? It's a bit of a trick, not a trick one, it's a bit of a tricky one to answer. Here we are, we've got everyone voted there. And oh, interesting, most of you got the wrong answer. It is surprising, it is 14%. According to the same report as I did earlier, the percentage of evaluations for quality purposes, more than 14% of people evaluated more than 10%. What's rather worrying is over a quarter evaluated 1% of calls or less. So I think there's a big lesson there to get the numbers up if you can, and maybe technology has a role in that. And last question, which metric did Thomas recommend incenting advisors around? Was it A, customer effort, B, customer satisfaction, C, the net promoter score, or was it D, sentiment scoring? So which metric did Thomas recommend for incentivizing advisors? So I think hopefully most of you should have got this one right. And here we go. So indeed, most of you got that right. 82 of the audience got sentiment scoring. So Thomas, it does seem that everyone was listening, which is great.
Most of them were, yes, thank you.
So here we are, associate level changes from Thomas's presentation. So the winner, here we have lots of people got very high scores this week, but the winner was Jasmine won. So we'll be getting in touch with Jasmine to sort out a prize for you. So we're going to jump across now to the chat room, see what we've got coming through in the chat room. We'll do some top tips and questions. So we've got some more answers in challenges about QA, which is getting all staff to think about it as a positive aspect and embracing it as a way to improve service. Getting the correct weighting, as Daryl says. Calibration initiatives with consistency and performance, as Susan, and make it easy for staff as opposed to something they need to remember. So let's have a look. We've got a couple of tips coming in. Leslie says, why measure what you expect, i.e. adherence to process? That just makes it a tick box exercise approach to QA. Measure and reward the agent for driving positive customer emotion and sentiment through rapport building and empathy, problem solving skills, and ownership. Sounds like this is a summary of your presentation there, Thomas.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's kind of hits it to a T and just kind of gives a way to actually do that.
Very good. Alex says, encourage your agents to get involved in creating quality measures and to take part in quality calibrations. Agent engagement can be key in ensuring ongoing buy-in to the output. Lauren, I like this as a tip, and getting everyone involved in the calibration.
Yes, a couple of ideas I'm going to present to get everyone involved in my presentation, so stay tuned.
Wonderful. Well, we've got a question from Daryl, who says, question for Thomas. What application or CX service are you using to measure analytics?
We're a nice in contact shop. So we are using interaction analytics for all of our analytics through Nice in Contact. So I know Lauren's going to show some of the kind of more advanced features of some of a like tool that I know uses kind of the same engine. So I think that her presentation will give a really cool look at kind of some of the things that I can actually look at in my center.
So is yours the Nexidia engine, or is it the other one you're using?
I think Lauren's going to show the Nexidia, correct, Lauren?
Yes, I'm going to show the nice Nexidia.
And you're
Cool.
using
So they're all related and they're all in the same family.
Right.
Okay. The big brother, the big sister, I guess. So here we are. Laura says, question, if you can't afford new software with the analytics features at the time, what's the best approach to take on QA? Lauren probably is the best one to answer that.
Yeah, there are some things you can do. And again, I'll be talking a little bit more about that, but it's looking at what metrics that you can actually capture and measure. I know Thomas said he doesn't like the NPS CSAT score, but maybe you can use some of that to drive at least an evaluation versus a random selection. So look at some of your metadata from various systems you probably have in place today, such as your telephony system. You can look at long calls, short calls, transfers. That kind of data can really drive a logic behind why you're evaluating.
Excellent. We've got a question in from Sarah, and Thomas, you probably could give an answer to this one. How do you account for uncontrollable factors in client sentiment or satisfaction? I guess uncontrollable factors are always things like, I often say it on QA, did the customer, did you take the customer through security? And if they just phoned up and wanted the opening hours, that wasn't appropriate to take them through security. Right. So how do you account for those uncontrollable factors when it comes to sentiment?
Well, the cool thing is the analytic piece can give us, what we don't know, right, is one piece. And then the other piece is we can set this up to try to make some of these uncontrollable factors, especially if they are repeatable and we kind of see them, I guess, more controllable, right? So we can actually set things up to what should happen at the beginning of a call. We can do if-thens, like if a customer says this, then the rep should have done this. So there's some of those pieces. The other thing is, this is all done on transcription, right? So, sometimes the transcription might be a little bit off, and the tools allow us to kind of go in there and change where if there's a word that it keeps saying as, it thinks it's a the when it's an and, right? That's a horrible example that I'm giving, but you kind of see the difference that we can actually go in and say, hey, if this word is said, it's actually this. So to try to, get as much as we possibly can this down to it takes some work, right? It takes a little bit of work to make sure that we're kind of going through some of that stuff. But, once you kind of build it out, you can really limit a lot of these, kind of crazy off the wall factors that may happen.
Wonderful. We've got a few tips and opinions coming through. Charles says, the best way to improve quality is to improve employee engagement. If your employees are engaged, they'll look after the customers. The customers then look after your results. You can't put a price on engagement. I think that's a great sentiment there. And Becky has got a tip. Create a continuous framework so every piece of work that passes through quality can continuously loop the cycle to ensure you're not becoming complacent or missing opportunities to improve and enhance your service. I personally use identify, measure, document, and support as my four quadrants. I wonder if there's some sort of an acronym you can, some pattern you can spell out from there. So Lauren, identify, measure, document, support. They seems a very good approach to having this as quadrants.
Yeah, and that is a great best practice to do that because we find that it's not, you go through a cycle once and then you have to tweak it. It's not always a perfect science. You need to look at and isolate certain behaviors, make changes to them, make changes to your process, and then test it and report on it to see if it actually works. and then make adjustments for there. So pilot programs are a great way to do that. Also use this methodology. Great tip.
Excellent. We've got a lot of great tips coming through. We're just going to take a couple more before we do Lauren's presentation. Francis says, do a deep dive of non-result calls to create a CQ grid to capitalize on missed opportunities. I think deep dives are a great one of ones that didn't get the result you were expecting. Gives you a lot of insight. And Amy says, we follow a risk-based approach for the number of calls to validate per advisor per month based on the advisor's failure rate. This enables us to be more flexible and focus in the right places. Thomas, I've certainly seen quality scoring done on a sort of traffic light, red, amber, green, that people who do really well, they get evaluated less. People who are struggling get extra support, more listening to, more guidance. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the human nature, right? And we all have resources that are scarce. So we need to, place resources where they think. I just, you have to be careful of the complacency. It's very difficult. Again, we have found too, when we're just doing kind of the needle in the haystack, that, depending on the amount of calls, it really changed what the scores were, right? So if we're only doing 3 or 4 calls per week, but then, we go on a rep and we do 10 calls, and we actually found out that, it really wasn't that bad. that rep was actually doing a pretty good job, but it was just kind of that small sample size. So that's just another thing you have to be careful of when you're kind of looking at how many calls you're listening to get a real percentage.
Indeed. Well, that's probably a good time now to jump across to Lauren. And Lauren, you can take us through some of the ways that technology can help us to improve,
Okay,
quality.
let me see if I can get my presentation.
There we are. Just if you want to go full screen.
Got it? Can you see?
There we are.
All right.
Perfect.
So, all right. Thanks. That was a great setup, Thomas, for my presentation. So why are we thinking about a new way of doing quality? And I think we talked a little bit about that. With the pandemic, everyone went home, and what we talked about, maybe 1% of all interactions being evaluated for quality. We found during the pandemic, it was actually became less. And the reason is because there was a spike in call volume and less resources. A lot of the quality team members were asked to contribute and get back on the phones and help with some of those calls. So there were less evaluations. And it was sort of a cascading effect as to what happened to the quality program. So, and also going home, you have less visibility into what your advisors are doing. So the supervisors all of a sudden couldn't just walk by their office and give them in the moment training. We really have to rethink the way we're doing quality. And those quality programs that were manual or that we're looking at agent quotas, certain number of interactions being evaluated per month, actually started to, they weren't agile enough. They weren't ready and able to adapt to the changes that were taking place in the environment. So let's look at what hasn't changed. What hasn't changed are that advisors are really still critical to ensuring customer satisfaction. So if your number one goal is to increase customer satisfaction, which we saw in that survey, your advisors are really key to helping that. And that was very low on the survey. So there's some sort of disconnect there. That we know that engaged advisors or employees in general are more likely to stay within their organization. And they're also more likely to feel extremely empowered to resolve customer issues. So if they're engaged, and this data is from Gallup, so there is a connection there. And what we came up with, really, how do we move forward from here? We came up with a best practices for it in 3 steps. So as Thomas mentioned, it's really, the goal is to get to using your tools, to using sentiment and to auto score and that analytics driven quality program. But the issue is with a lot of organizations, they just can't say, all right, one day I'm doing 3 interaction evaluations per agent per month to moving on to that sentiment driven quality program or scoring. And it seems too big a project or too disruptive. So there is a way to step into that and to take on more and more and really have a goal of moving into a leading edge program. So this is really designed to increase employee as well as customer satisfaction. Step 1 of this, I'd like to equate it. I know summer's gone, but we're equating it with learning how to swim. So maybe it's still warm in your area, and you can recall this from the summer. But step 1 is more like dipping your toe in the water, getting used to doing that analytics-driven quality program by taking some of those random or quota-based evaluations and finding that metric that you can identify or a repeatable behavior that you want to change. So what you would do is look for like a CSAT score or a long call. Use something within your either CTI system, a metadata point that you can bring in your quality system, or even analytics, and to drive that performance. So for example, here, there's a supervisor and agent dashboard where that supervisor's really, they're looking at customer satisfaction, and they're using the data point as escalations to, which again can be tracked in using metadata or even analytics to associate it with customer satisfaction, doing some coaching around it, and then seeing where that metric lands after that happens. So it's really a 360 approach to quality. You're looking at associating a metric with a quality score with an action that you need to take, which is coaching, and then how did the metric end up doing? So it's great to look at a pilot program because not everyone can correlate all these things together, the cause and effect. So a lot of organizations will stay in step 1 for quite a while until they can get to the next step. So the next step is what we call the learning how to swim step, or the dog, you're just learning, you're doing the doggy paddle is what we call it. And here we're really going to expand that metric driven approach. So we're going to take on other metrics. Instead of using, let's say, 5 interactions per agent per month, we'll supplement it with more of an analytics-driven evaluation and quality approach. You're going to start using your analytics to score and have that aggregate to a dashboard within your quality solution. So here we're using an analytics approach to this aggregation. And we're showing that there's verification issues, whether they happened or they didn't. You can very easily turn on speech analytics to determine whether something was said or not said, and score that automatically to your dashboard, removing that metric from your evaluation form, saving a lot of time. Here's where we provide agents and quality teams and supervisors with access to dashboards, and then also really to drive empowerment by giving advisors access to their own recordings, to their own performance evaluations, giving them the ability to request coaching and do a self-evaluation, really empowering those employees. So let's look at, here's an example of how we're automatically suggesting an answer to an evaluation form question. There's a question on why this customer called in, and the system automatically detected using speech analytics that the customer's calling about pet insurance. So no longer do the agents have to categorize those calls, again, saving time. and allowing you to focus on what's important. So step 3 is the transformational aspect of quality management. Here, you're really taking it to the next level, not just using analytics as we know it today, but using artificial intelligence to drive and understand what is happening with customer sentiment. So I'm showing you in this screenshot here, there's sentiment scores, but those sentiment scores tell you one story. They're telling you what the customer felt about the interaction, but what did the agent actually do to contribute to that sentiment score? That can be broken down by behaviors. And what artificial intelligence does, there's models, different modeling of behaviors, and it can automatically detect when these behaviors are exhibited or not, and whether that's contributing to a sentiment score. So this is really very new in the contact center to use and break down an interaction to this level. And this can be done on every single call, on every single digital interaction. Here it's broken down by site, supervisor, and then by agent. With that, you can really get to those teachable, coachable moments as examples and automate that all the way through to delivery and reporting. So how do you know where you stand on this quality journey or this maturity model? And if you're even ready for the next step, let's look first at a summary of this. The transactional focus is where the targeted monitoring is. Ask yourself some of these questions. Can you identify those meaningful interactions? Do you have a plan? Can you identify who will benefit from them, who the stakeholders are, and get them involved early in the process? So from the next step, kind of provides a more influential within the organization and a higher impact on the organization. You're really using 100% quality monitoring, delivering an unbiased quality process to the organization, being able to get at those root cause of why interactions are going well or not well, and being able to assess it from there. And the third is the organizational focus. That's the transformational quality, where you really are redefining customer experience for the entire organization. You need to have people trust in the process and direction that you're going. So we really recommend that you get different people from the organization involved and be able to articulate an ROI to those key stakeholders. It's really important to have a steering committee because this is an ongoing exercise. There's going to be constant improvements and changes within your organization. It really will have, like I said, a broader impact on your organization. So I think we have a poll question right now here.
Yeah, so
where are you on your quality? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so we're asking the question of where are you on the quality journey? Would you say you're in the transactional focus, targeted quality monitoring? Would you say the trend focus, which is metric-driven quality monitoring? Or would you say you're in the organizational focus, which is transformational quality? So where would you put yourself on that quality journey? I'd just like to vote on that. We've got about half the people in so far, so I'll just allow you a little bit more time to pull that in. I think we've got most of the results there, and I'm just going to share the results. So Lauren, perhaps not surprisingly, we've got a lot of people at the transactional focus end, but it's quite reassuring to see that over half of the organization are either on the trend or the organizational focus.
Yeah, I'm not surprised based on the numbers that you showed earlier with the organizations that are using analytics. So that would make sense to me. It's right in line with whether you're using a spreadsheet, analytics, or even something more in addition to it, which is the organizational focus. So one thing about that transformational quality I wanted to add, because there were are a lot of questions about calibration, is when you're automatically looking at behaviors and the system is scoring behaviors for you, automatically those calibration sessions really are a different conversation. First of all, you probably don't need as many, but when you do have them, you're no longer talking about trying to interpret what the call or the interaction was about and scoring it, but what to do about it. So because the system scored it, how are we going to improve? And I think that's a very good use of time. So just to kind of go through the last slide here, which isn't, so there's really three key areas of improving the customer and employee experience that we spoke about. First is using interaction analytics, which is very good at detecting spoken speech events or digital event, kind of those discrete events, we call them. So whether something happened or didn't based on the spoken or written word. The second is machine learning, which is more predictive and interpretive on agent soft skills, which we know are very, very difficult to do. I think that came through as one of the challenges. And then finally, what do you do with all that scoring from the machine learning and the analytics, bringing it in and being able to operationalize it in quality management is really a key to being successful, being able to look at all the stakeholders having a dashboard or having information and knowing how to act on that information. So that is it for me. And I went through this very, very quickly. So we have some white papers. I encourage you to download some in the resources with the links here and on our website. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that indeed, Lauren. Some great stuff there. Am I on mute? Hopefully not.
No.
Okay, good. So just a quick poll. If you'd like to see a demonstration of the nice contact center solutions, the analytics solutions can help improve quality. I'd just like to put that into the box. I certainly like, Lauren, some of the things you were talking about. Quality is like learning to swim. You need to dip your toe in the water by doing a pilot program. And I did like the idea about what did an advisor do that could contribute to a sentiment score. And it's very nice to see things like active listening being able to be scored upon. I think that's a very nice touch there. So I'm just going to jump across now, and we'll have a look at some top tips and questions and see what the audience has been saying. So the first one we've got from Emily says, we measure soft skills and compliance or conduct separately. If someone fails conduct, someone fails conduct but smashes soft skills, we can still provide positive feedback on the customer experience, and it works extremely well for engagement. Thomas, what's your thought on that?
No, I like that because, I guess from a culture standpoint, right, we want to kind of promote and rah-rah everything we can, right? So like we promote on the floor and we kind of train off the floor. So I think that this is a really good way to, even if somebody does make a mistake, right, you can still go and be like, hey, you did great on this piece of this, right? We just got to kind of focus on this area. So, I like not smashing the reps for doing things wrong and figuring out how we can engage better and be positive with the coaching that we're giving. And I think this is a really good way. Thank you, Emily. That's a great idea.
Well, I've got some great tips here. Gaurav has said, I've noticed that actively involving agents during the creation of quality monitoring framework can be immensely effective. It will not only onboard the agents with an idea of quality monitoring, but also makes them feel engaged, empowered, and aligned with the customer service goals. I guess that's something you could do almost to design a scorecard with people during the induction process, albeit maybe it.
Yeah, and just John, let me add to that. I love that idea. And the other thing that we do too that I think can be a tip is we call our management trainees kind of our team leads, and they rotate in our QA area, right? So before they can come out on the floor as a supervisor, they have to go spend time, and it's a couple weeks to a month in QA so that they kind of understand the process of all that too. So I think, you know, however you can engage that call center floor with that process is a really important piece.
I think it's a wonderful idea. Laura says having a calibration session with your QA coaches and supervisors is crucial. Lauren, what I might think is terrible behavior might be perceived as great service to someone else. You need to have a calibration section so that all persons doing QA are on the same page, so scoring is fair and the agents know what to expect. Calibration, Lauren, seems to be a common theme there.
It is, yeah. Calibration is, I know a lot of QA teams spend a lot of time on that calibration process. And another customer of ours had a really good process where they would have calibration with different groups, not just the coaches, but the operations team and then senior management with the agents. They went through this whole process, and it really developed, it really got everyone involved in the quality and bought into the quality program by doing that. It took a little extra time, but it was great. And I think that this is a great tip, Laura.
Here's a great one from Max. We're starting only to score on things that impact on the customer experience. Procedures still get reported on, but don't affect the agent score. I think that's a great thing. Net Promoter Score, I don't particularly like, because it's like you can do really well, but if the company puts its prices up, those scores are gonna drop beyond what the advisor can do. Kieran has said, select a theme of the month for each agent based on their call recordings. It could be a soft skill, pitch, tone, empathy, or it might be technical, the information provided, system use. I've had some good results getting my guys to focus on 1 point per month. It's a lot easier to focus on one thing. I think the old phrase is you can do one thing well or two things badly. So focusing on one can be good. Emily says, keep agents happy with hamper deliveries on a Monday morning or Friday afternoons. They feel appreciated. Providing £5 online gift cards to Deliveroo or Uber Eats could be nice. Obviously not something you can do every week, but work from home in a call center is so hard. And it'd be the small things your company does that will ensure retention and happiness.
Love that.
I love that. The only one you got to watch now is if people are working from home, they're going to have to put the caller on hold while they get to the door, unless there's some other solution to that one. That's no different from one call center that put callers on hold because the donut trolley had come round. Sarah said, measure client satisfaction in two ways, both the point of interaction and the NPS score, which is an annual score. James said, I started creating a framework scorecard in Excel, which is now built in on the back end of our software platform. But we have much of my analysis is still on Excel. And we got a final tip in from Emily. I think Emily's trying to win the prize. Try to engage your team, provide incentives for when they are working well. You have to try and build a really good team vibe. I wouldn't disagree with that. It could be that they're scared to give you feedback. So maybe try to have a champion in the team who they feel comfortable in giving it to. That's a very good idea. And that's what we do here, at least, and the feedback is always very positive. So unfortunately, we've reached the top of the hour. In one or two words, what did you like best about today's webinar? We promised you the winning tip, and the winning tip comes in from Scott. And Scott says, be sure to add positive comments into the feedback, not just the opportunities. So accentuate the positive, as the old song goes there, which I think is great. We've got a little survey when you leave. It's only 4 questions long if you'd like to fill that in. We should have the recording online in probably just over an hour's time, so it would be good. Next week, we're looking at the latest developments in contact centers, followed by, as we move into November, creating a culture that customers and advisors love. I'm looking forward to that one. And so I'd just like to thank our 2 speakers. Thank you to Thomas Laird, who is also known as the call center geek. So if anyone wants to catch up with Thomas, they can either connect you on LinkedIn or search for the contact center, so the call center geek on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, Jonty.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lauren Maschio from Nice Systems, for sharing your thoughts on analytics.
Thanks, Jonty. Thanks, Thomas, as well.
You too, Lauren. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. It's been a fabulous webinar, lots of people online. And stay tuned and come back next week when we're looking at the latest developments in contact centers. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.